Welcome, everyone, to the bonus episode for episode 91, where we are going to talk a bit about Abimelech and his killing massacre of multiple people upon one stone. We were like, what the hell does that mean? I have no idea. Upon one stone. So I looked up this little ebook called The Book of Judges, A Study in Prophetic History. Wow.
What a title.
Yes, indeed. It talks about the meaning of the phrase upon one stone. So it says that it is obscure and lends itself to a variety of interpretations. Great. Okay, we're starting off strong here. So it has been suggested that the phrase calls to mind the ancient notion that blood spilt on the earth cries out to heaven, as in the case of the slaying of Abel when the Lord said to Cain, "What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground." So I guess it kind of talks about how human blood exposed on the ground that was not buried by being covered with earth indicated that it had been shed through violence that called for retribution. So
it's implying Abimelech's a bad boy by slaughtering them on a stone instead of peacefully allowing them to die of old age and then burying them.
Well, yeah, definitely. And it says spilled blood upon a rock precludes burying the blood and thus reflects extreme callousness. So thus, when Abimelech slaughtered his half-brothers upon one stone, leaving their bloodied corpses unburied, he committed this atrocity without giving any thought to the matter of divine retribution for his crime.
Emily, sometimes I think that these things that you find to read kind of make the stories more confusing in a way, because they're like...
Is this more confusing? I think it's trying to be less confusing, but it is telling you that like there's a variety of interpretations, so we don't really know. We're just going to like go with our idea of what this interpretation is, I guess.
I think that's what makes it more confusing, is that
I suppose
a lot of these books and articles are then trying to not find a good, like, accurate recounting of the story or the history, but they're trying to tie it in to their theology, or they're like trying to tie in a meaning, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something we come across, that like we'll read a story and just be the bumbling chuckleheads that we are, being like, oh, I wonder what that means. Maybe it means this. I don't know. Maybe it means this. Oh, wow, that's nuts. You know, yada, yada, yada. And then ever so often we'll get someone who emails us or tweets at us or leaves a comment or whatever, writing a whole thesis statement about like, well, this is what it means, clearly. And
but did they know? Do they know any better than we do?
Thing, is that usually it's like, this is what it means roped into the theology and doctrine that I was raised with, you know, which I'm kind of treating as though it's objective fact instead of just one of many interpretations. And
or even the theology they've studied, not even just what they were raised with, but maybe they have studied it, but it's still like within that lens, you know?
I don't want to discourage people from doing that, for sure. Like, it is interesting, you know, but it is just kind of fascinating how... I don't know. It really makes me examine my own upbringing and my own interpretations of the Bible, and how, to me, they feel so solid and like, well, this is fact and this is the correct interpretation of what happens, when clearly that's not the case, you know? And so it is funny to see that kind of repeated by a lot of people who reach out to us who are like, no, like, what I'm about to tell you, this is how you should interpret it. Like, it's just
the creator of this ebook is also doing exactly the same thing.
Right.
Essentially, yeah. Well, something I will just say that the ebook talked about quickly is that Abimelech is an Israelite and a Canaanite person, so he's bringing both of them together in a way, which is interesting for the first time.
Yahweh does not like that.
Interesting, huh?
But he was also not considered in Scripture as the first king of Israel, because he was neither enthroned in the name of God nor anointed. So therefore, he's counted as a judge. So that's interesting. That's why. That's like the distinction of him. He's a judge.
That's an interesting distinction to make. That, like, in this book of Judges, we've kind of in that question of like, what's a judge?
Well, yeah, why? Like, oh, this person is a judge, and y'all are just like, oh yeah, this one is now a judge, and I'm like, why? Why is he a judge?
Well, but it seems like that term, that's like a generic term for they're a leader of some part of Israel, but we're not calling them kings because they haven't united Israel potentially. Not that Moses was ever really referred to by a king, even though he did kind of rule over a united Israel. So I don't know what that's quite about.
I mean, I wouldn't call him a king. I would just call him a guy who had a stutter, who like gradually became better at who gradually became better at speaking over time, and then became this like, I mean, a prophet. Don't people call him a prophet, or is he not a prophet? He's a leader,
right? I think he gets counted as a prophet. I don't know.
He's the patriarch.
Right. But I guess
I see him listed as a patriarch.
Okay, but not in like the bad, like crush the patriarch way. Just like as
Well, kind of depends on who you talk to.
Right.
a little column A, a little column B. Okay, fine.
Yeah, but right. But it feels like the leaders during the during the Pentateuch, during those first 5 books, are just referred to as the patriarchs, like just literally meaning like the male leaders.
Yeah. There wouldn't be female leaders. Come on.
Well, right. But that later on, we do have kings. We're not there yet, but there will eventually be kings.
Aren't there kings in the book? There's a book of kings?
A couple books, I think, yeah.
Dedeker's laughing because she's like, God, you don't even know this. Stupid. Yeah.
Yes, there are first and second kings. And as you might predict, it talks about some kings.
Cool.
Right. So I think it's more
excited to get there.
I think the thing you were reading, Emily, is more pointing out the fact that even though...
He ain't one.
Well, you could look at this and go, oh, Abimelech killed all the other leaders and became the one ruler, so wouldn't that make him a king? But kind of saying, well, we're not calling him that, though, because he didn't become an Israelite king in the way that later you would, like being ordained or whatever. I don't exactly know how that process goes.
Me neither.
That's the question. When do you transition from like chief to a king? Is it like, do you need to have multiple? Is it multiple cities? Is it multiple nations that you're ruling over? Is it multiple city states? Or
yeah, your city needs to have walls of a certain height.
Right. Do you need to have enough wealth accrued that you can make a reasonably fashionable crown to wear, and then you can be called a king rather than just a chief? Like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know either, but that's fun. Yeah. All right. Did you find more out about stuff?
Yeah, the one other thing that I looked up was about the parable that Jotham says, when he goes up on the hilltop or whatever and says to everyone, like, hey, keep this in mind. And he tells that story about the trees, like going to the olive tree and asking the olive tree to be their leader, and the olive tree's like, what, I should stop making olives and just wave about over you? And then they go to the fig tree,
that.
And
stupid.
and the fig tree says the same kind of thing, and then they go to the wine, what are those called, vines? Yeah, that's the one.
the wine boy.
No,
it's
the wine
boy.
bush. Traditionally, for many years, they just call it the wine bush.
The wine bush, yeah, that's good. They go to the wine bush and they ask it, and it's like, what? Stop making wine and rule over you? And then they finally go to the bramble, and the bramble's like, yeah, like bow down underneath my shade, and I'll rule over you. And if you don't let me rule over you, I'm gonna burn you all up. And then, so a couple of things I learned that was interesting about this is, one is that the tree apparently is a very common metaphor for Israel. So that was one. I was just like, oh, I guess I didn't.
Just tree in general?
Yeah, like using trees as a metaphor for Israel.
Okay.
But then the other part is this particular article I'm finding by Stan Patterson, who's, someone who talks about the Bible. The thing that he brought up that I did think was kind of interesting is that he mentions that in the very last line of the story, we get a species of tree, like we get a specific type of tree, as opposed to just saying the trees.
Yeah. And
he's trying to make the argument that that's relevant, that like knowing the type of tree is important. And basically it's that the very last line is where it says, is the part where it's going like, but if you don't take refuge in my shade, then may fire come out of the bramble and consume the cedars of Lebanon. And so that particular type of tree, what's significant is just the fact that that tree, the cedar of Lebanon, is taller than any of the other trees that are mentioned.
Oh, wow.
But that the trees they're asking get progressively shorter, right? An olive tree versus a fig tree versus a grapevine, which first of all isn't a tree and second of all is shorter. And then the bramble, which is also not a tree and the shortest of all, kind of that's an aspect to it as well, that they're kind of like for them to rule over the cedars means that those cedars would have to like really stoop themselves low to be in their shade.
Are they throwing shade? Are they throwing shade at Abimelech being short?
Oh, interesting.
Wait, is he short? Did they talk about this?
That was not talked about.
No, he didn't. But now it's in my head that he's a little shorty. And that's why it adds insult to injury, where they're like, no, we can't bow down to this short king. Who wants a short king?
I'm sorry. It adds insult to injury that you said that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I missed somewhere that he was short. And Dedeker's going to be like, how did you miss this?
Yeah. So I guess it's hard to tell whether he's throwing shade at him for being short or whether it's more just a metaphor. But either way, shade is being thrown at shortness in general, which, I mean, we could talk about that with this Stan Patterson, who's maybe he's related to me. That's funny. My dad's mom's side of the family is the Patterson side.
Oh, really?
Which is also a
Patterson
super common name, but...
I was just going to make a sarcastic joke about it being a super rare name, but you beat me to it.
I did.
It's not.
Let's see. He's a PhD. He's the chair of the Department of Christian Ministry, which is... Okay, so he's clearly coming at it from a slant. But I still think he made some interesting observations about just like what's actually in the passage. And that's what I like, is that he was talking about like the words that are there and trying to like look at, oh, well, that's significant, rather than just like, well, it's because it wasn't holy, and therefore he's a bad boy.
Oh.
Although I would totally listen to that sermon.
Therefore he's a bad boy.
He's a very bad boy.
Well, that was a great bonus content where I got to sit around and have the two of you teach me stuff.
It's different from normal, yeah.
I know. I love this role reversal. Anyway, thank you for joining us for this week's bonus content. We would love to see you around the Drunk Bible Study fans and fellowship group to discuss this, and we will see y'all next week.
Bye.